Good evening, I'm Chris Matthews in New York. Leading off tonight, it's got to be me. It's not an official declaration, but Sarah Palin just told Entertainment Tonight, if there's nobody else to do it, then of course I would believe that we should do this. She's laying down the predicate for running. We'll show you how plausible it is for Palin to win the Republican nomination, if not go all the way. Also, time to break out the crystal ball. We've seen the polls, watched the debates, and heard the sound bites on the campaign trail. Now it's time for predictions here on Hardball. Can the Democrats hold the Senate? Will Republicans win the House? And who will surprise us on election night? All that in our lightning round tonight on Hardball. Plus, President Obama's appearance last night on The Daily Show. Why did he do it, and what did he get out of it? And when you hear a politician say the only poll that counts is the one on Election Day, you know what that means? It means the candidate knows he's a goner. Tonight, we'll clue you in on when a candidate knows it's over and lets you know it. And wait till you hear what the 3 Alaska Senate candidates said when they were forced to answer my favorite political question. Is Sarah Palin qualified to be president? All that's ahead. First, let's check the latest poll numbers on the Hardball scoreboard. We'll start with Pennsylvania, where Republican Pat Toomey is pulling away from Joe Sestak in the Muhlenberg Morning Call tracking poll. It's Toomey 48, Sestak 40. In Colorado, Senator Michael Bennet has a slim 1-point lead over Ken Buck in a new RBI poll, 43-42. Now to Florida and the new Quinnipiac poll. This is a big one. In that Senate race, Charlie Crist is gaining ground. He now trails Marco Rubio by just 7, with Kendrick Meek way behind. And in the Florida governor's race, big surprise here, Alex Sink has a 4-point lead over Rick Scott. I guess people were discounting that kerfuffle the other night on that debate. And the latest field poll of the governor's race in California. Look at this. Jerry Brown up by 10 over Meg Whitman. She is not doing well, 49-39. We'll continue to check the Hardball scoreboard on all the big races each night leading up to Election Day. Now to Sarah Palin. Sam Stein covers politics for the Huffington Post, and Susan Page is the Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today. Here's Palin talking about a 2012 bid with Entertainment Tonight's Mary Hart, an interview set to air tonight. Let's listen.
You know, I have not decided what I'm going to do in 2012. I don't think any of the potential candidates have. I think that still it is too early for anybody to get out there declaring what their intentions are. For me, Mary, it's going to entail a discussion with my family, a real close look at the lay of the land, and to consider whether there are those with that common sense, conservative, pro-Constitution passion, whether there are already candidates out there who can do the job, and I'll get to be their biggest supporter and their biggest helpmate if they will have me, or whether there's nobody willing to do it and to make the tough choices and not care what the critics are going to say about you, just going forward according to what I believe the priority should be. If there's nobody else to do it, then of course I would believe that we should do this.
Wow, you know, I read that, Sam Stein, as a go, that this woman, this candidate, the former governor of Alaska, is saying, I have to do it. It's not about ego. It's not me. There's nobody else who can really carry the crusade forward. I've got to do it. It sounds to me like a countdown to action.
Yeah, it reminded me of my own mindset when I ran for 7th grade president. If there was no one else, then why not me? But in all seriousness, it does sound sort of like she's a go. It sounds like the Fred Thompson angle, where she's going to wait it out, let people duke it out, and swoop in there with her sort of crystallized 25 to 35% of support of the Republican base and try to wrestle the nomination for herself.
How do you read it, Susan?
Yeah, I think, you know, this is very consistent with something she told an interviewer last month, but she's definitely leaning forward, it seems to me. And you know, I've assumed that she's a go since she endorsed Terry Branstad for governor of Iowa, not really a new wave kind of Republican, but somebody who could be very helpful to her in the Iowa caucuses.
Let's take a look at Karl Rove, who tried to throw cold water in this. Here's a quote picked up by the London Telegraph, quote, "With all due candor, appearing on your own reality show on the Discovery Channel, I'm not certain how that fits in the American calculus of that helps me see you in the Oval Office." Well, he's a wise guy, sarcastic, one of the boys club, if you will, Susan. Is that the way that's going to strike a lot of women Republicans out there? Another wise guy putting down a woman candidate?
You know, I think that voters who are looking, number one, they want gravitas in a presidential candidate, are not Sarah Palin's natural base. People who like Sarah Palin like the fact that she is genuine, that she's different from the others, that she connects, that she'd go on a reality show about Alaska. You know, I think it is one more interesting, brilliant, different, unconventional step that she's taken to do this show on the Discovery Channel. And I think Karl Rove is missing the point of why some voters are really drawn to her.
You know, I want to underline that because you knew me back in the old days when I worked for Tip O'Neill 100 years ago, remember? And you know what took him from being a successful Democratic political leader, and he left office about 65% in popularity, is when he went on Cheers. And all of a sudden, something cultish began, Sam. All of a sudden, you step into that grand part of American culture, and you do well there. And people say, yeah, this is where you belong in America. You're not some weird geek from politics. You know, we can look down on it. I would never look down on it because I've seen how it works. Ronald Reagan came from Death Valley days. Yeah. Ronald Reagan came from GE Theater, one of the most popular. In fact, it was #3 on television back in the 50s, one of those years in the late 50s. So coming from popular culture or going to it doesn't seem to be like a misstep to me.
Sure, but there is one element that we're not discussing, and I think what Karl Rove's focused on, which is that there is this perception that she quit the governorship of Alaska for the sort of the grand aspects of Hollywood, of reality TV, of book tours. And you know what Karl Rove is getting at is that in the premiere of that show, she says, "I'd rather be doing this than sitting in some stuffy old political office." Well, voters are going to be a little skeptical of that. They're going to say, "Well, you were in a stuffy political office, and you quit that stuffy political office. Why should we trust you to run for president if your heart's not really in it?" And I think that's what Karl Rove is focused on, and I don't think he's wrong to focus on that.
Well, let's take an ad for how she's advertising this show herself. This is on the Learning Channel, by the way. Carl, you got that one wrong. Let's listen.
Sarah, you ready?
Oh, gosh. We are somewhere that people dream about. Family comes first. It's just got to be that way. No, boys, go upstairs. This is flippin' fun. How come we can't ever just be satisfied with tranquility? I'd rather be doing this than in some stuffy old political office. I'd rather be out here being free.
An all-new 8-week television event, Sarah Palin's Alaska. Premieres Sunday, November 14th at 9 on TLC.
Susan Page, one of the real sparkling delights of this election year, and I think progressives don't like it at all, but it's a reality, and I like anything that gets people involved in politics, to be honest. I want democracy to flourish. Our grizzly moms. If you look at the women candidates, and they are largely women candidates on the Republican side, the conservative side, the Tea Parties are women. Whether it's Nikki Haley down in South Carolina, who's probably the next governor down there, or it's Michelle Bachmann, who just goes further and further out successfully, or this candidate, with the exception of Christine O'Donnell, they're doing fine. And my question is, will women like this new robust image they have? It is not the frail flower. It's not the girl that gets saved in the monster movies. It's the one who saves herself.
You know, I think it is appealing, although women, of course, women voters are very engaged in the substance of positions, too. So I think there are probably a lot of liberal women who are not going to be attracted to the conservative mama grizzlies, and some moderates might be put off, too. But it does go to the point of how things are falling into place for a potential Palin candidacy. You mentioned Nikki Haley. She'd be governor of South Carolina if she wins. That's one of those early states right after New Hampshire.
Right.
Nevada, where Sharon Angle looks like she may well topple the Senate Majority Leader. You know, Nevada is also one of those first 4 states in the presidential nominating contest. Here are states where very conservative women with unconventional political backgrounds are doing well.
That's why I like having a pro on like you who's been through this. You know, Sam, I will make the point she made it equally strongly. Number one, if you go into the fight for the presidential nomination in the Republican Party, the first big fight is Iowa, where the Christian evangelicals are very strong. One woman candidate against 4 or 5 guys, some of them secular candidates, maybe one like Huckabee, somewhat of a Christian conservative. She wins that state. Maybe she only wins with 28 or 33%, but she wins that hands down. Then she goes to New Hampshire. She does okay. She gets a strong third. As they say in horse race, she shows. at minimum. Then she gets down to evangelical, I should say Baptist South Carolina, with the help of the governor down there, the one she helped become governor, and kills them all down there in South Carolina, where Bush beat McCain back in the old days. Then she goes for the kill. She goes to the mothership. What's ever left of Mitt Romney, if there's anything left of him then, she goes up and finishes off the guy in Michigan who started Obamacare up in Massachusetts, the establishment Kennedy. At that point, the boys club meets somewhere in the South. All the governors get together. Chris Christie and Haley Barbour and a bunch of them get together, and they try to talk Huntsman into the race, or they try to talk Thune into the race if he's not in, or they try to talk Jeb into the race. That's my scenario right now. Her against the boys club.
I think you're right. I mean, there's two distinct features that pretend itself to a very successful Palin one. One is the geography, and you laid that out pretty clearly. Iowa sets up very well for her. I think New Hampshire does as well with its libertarian leanings, and of course South Carolina. The other thing is she has sort of ingrained in her something that differentiates herself from every other candidate, and that is that she's female and she's been there before on the national stage. You know, while all these other candidates are going to be duking it out, she can be elevated from it all, and she has a 30% base that will flock to her no matter what. The key is, can she get beyond that? And on the issue of female voters, you know, you have to look at the substance as well, as Susan noted. I think a lot of female voters actually are repulsed by her. But that said, you don't need to rely on female voters to win this.
Who's repulsed by her on the right?
On the right, that's tricky, but we're talking about a general election
format.
No,
I'm talking about winning the nomination right now. Let me go back to Susan.
My point is that, but the nomination does lay out pretty well for her, and largely on the back of male voters, I think.
Well, you win the nomination, you're in the game. Let me ask you this, Susan, one question. I think a lot of male conservatives like her style.
You know, I think she's fresh. She's into sync with this Tea Party movement that's going to be the big story next Tuesday night. Now, you know, 2 years, even a year from now, it's a lifetime. We don't know where the
thing starts in a couple of months, Susan.
But
don't be doing that. Don't be doing that to me. I've been through this as you have so many times. You know this election starts Tuesday night next week. You know it starts Tuesday night, and you will have the field shaped up by the end of this year. You will know who's running. So don't be putting it off in 3 years from now. I'm in the business of talking about what's going on, and that's going on this season, guys. Sam, it starts Tuesday night. Thank you, guys. We'll be writing about it Wednesday, by the way. We're kidding ourselves. Thank you.